we can always change the direction of our life towards what will actually make us more happy. And what I spend a lot of time working with my clients on is helping them see through the old stories that weren't theirs to begin with, to be able to get a dose of this, to be able to feel this, right? And, for the analytical mind, it's like, all right, man, well, I'm not going to just fucking quit my job and, exit this relationship or whatever and just dive into this shit. And I'm not saying that. For me in my journey, what's been super, super helpful is gradual implementation, okay? But there's always an extra hour or two in the day to spend either learning or growing or creating, reading, doing something that's going to benefit this exploration and this shift of trajectory in our life to become more happy and more liberated versions of ourselves. And now for something completely different. I'm excited to make a different video than normal today, a different maybe podcast than normal today. And I've been shifting in this direction gradually, my own way, towards being more in the moment, being more present. And I've been working with this in many different areas of my life for a while now, but when it comes to creating content, it's a little bit different. And if you have any experience with creating content, you may be aware of that, especially if it's where you are on the camera, you are on the microphone. So, historically speaking, if you either recently discovered me or you've seen my stuff for a while, there's always been something around cannabis often seen in the content, and there's reason for that. I've made plenty of content to dive into that, so I won't dive into that right now. Not saying I won't touch on it in this video, but this morning when I was reflecting, I was thinking about something that I was talking to a client about recently, and it's something that comes up a lot, and that's for anyone that feels stuck in an area of their life. If we dig deeper to what kind of desires, what kind of curiosities did the individual have before they became quote-unquote adult, before they got a dose of quote-unquote real life, right? And if you're first time here, you'll notice I use quotes a lot, and I have my reason for that, but I'm really going to try and stick on the topic here today. And so if you have something, whatever you're doing, whatever situation you're navigating in your life that is causing discontent, and we look at what you really want to do and what's the difference between those two, that is always going to show us a little bit of where we can find more happiness. Now, the analytical mind wants to come in and say, yeah, but when I was a kid, I wanted to do X, Y, Z, and that's just not realistic, blah, blah, blah. Or, yeah, I really wanted to do this, but now that I'm this age, X, Y, Z, okay? And while, if we really dial deep into it, say you're 60 or 70 or something and you wanted to be a basketball player when you were younger, yeah, obviously we're not going to be a basketball player, but there very well can be something that is in the category of what drove those feelings of joy and happiness around basketball that you can still tap into even wherever you are, even if you're 75 and 80, I don't care, right? We can always change the direction of our life towards what will actually make us more happy. And what I spend a lot of time working with my clients on is helping them see through the old stories that weren't theirs to begin with, to be able to get a dose of this, to be able to feel this, right? And, for the analytical mind, it's like, all right, man, well, I'm not going to just fucking quit my job and, exit this relationship or whatever and just dive into this shit. And I'm not saying that. For me in my journey, what's been super, super helpful is gradual implementation, okay? But there's always an extra hour or two in the day to spend either learning or growing or creating, reading, doing something that's going to benefit this exploration and this shift of trajectory in our life to become more happy and more liberated versions of ourselves. Okay, there's always room for it. So even when I have someone who's super, super busy, 60 hours a week, they're really dialed in. Once we kind of dive in a little bit, it's like, hey, yeah, there's a little bit of room here. There's a little bit of room here. There's a little bit of room here. Now, if you're someone who has plenty of time on your hand, and holy shit, man, there's so much you can do to contribute to opening up a new path, right, that will give you more happiness. Not only more happiness gives more health. You know, we've been unconsciously conditioned to chase after the things that we think at a deeper level will give us the happiness we desire. But when you look into this stuff, this self-help work, this rewiring the mind work, it's about cultivating and tapping into these spaces of being, feeling for the benefit of our health and clarity of mind and everything all throughout our body to give us more peace of mind day to day, which allows us to show up more as our authentic self, which allows us to offer more love to those around us, be more present, and make better decisions and respond better, you know, or more aptly to situations, right? You know, not only is this related to the brain, it's related to the central nervous system, the whole thing. And obviously, we can go down that road, but back to the meat of the intention for this, right? So if you are someone that's in that space where, yeah, man, you know what? Sure, I would like a shift in my life. I would like to do something different. All right, well, let's start small, okay? Like let's explore first and foremost. From my perspective, and I think the deeper you dig into this stuff, one of the biggest points of being here is to explore, to learn, to grow, to be curious, right? And so if you don't have anything in your mind right now, maybe you do, but if you don't have it, what else would I do? I would like something different. We got to explore, you know? And a lot of times what I will, and give you an example, a lot of times what I will, you know, advise individuals that I work with to try is to create content. And a lot of people will have resistance to that idea. Some people may, you know, if you're listening to this video, you may have already created some form of content, or maybe there's some kind of story as to why that's not the thing, you know. And some people I'll work with, it's like, yeah, man, I really, you know, I get it. I understand all this stuff can be alchemized and we can grow and all these things, but I really don't want my face on the camera. There's so many forms of ways that you can create content around things that you enjoy talking about or exploring, and still be able to generate a community around what you desire, around what you, not only what you desire, but also what you love and what you enjoy spending your time around. And then when you do that, you reach the space with experience that you're able to offer value, right? And then when you have that offer of value, now you have a stream of potential income there, okay? And I'm going to sidebar to Gary Vaynerchuk. If you're curious and exploring this, man, look up Gary Vaynerchuk. He has what do they call it? A brass tongue or whatever, like, you know, but he's so smart and he's so good at predicting trends and he's so knowledgeable in the space of creating content. If you begin creating content around something that you are passionate about, and you remain consistent with it, and you're doing it because you enjoy it, you're doing it also because, hey man, if it inspires one person, that's cool. And when individuals come to you, you're present with them and you try to help them to the best of your ability, because it all contributes to you learning what you're exploring, what you're doing. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this. Even if your thing is, I think he says 80s snow globes, right? If you make videos of 80s snow globes for 2 years and you're consistent with it, and this is what you love, this is what you enjoy, you'll be able to create a community and generate a source of income around that where you're helping other people in some way, right? And there's so many old stories that can block us from doing this, right? And it's a little bit challenging for me to really dive deeper. I'm usually talking to someone about this stuff and there's back and forth in this, but I just felt compelled to talk about this today because I think that, in the cannabis world, what we do in our daily life really plays a part in how the plant affects us, so many levels. So if we are living a life that the deeper part of ourself is not really happy with, then that's what we're going to get with that plant, right? But whether you indulge with the plant or not, this is something to look at. If the daily vibe, if your daily vibe is not what you would like it to be, I think about seeing like good vibes stickers, growing up and stuff, and like, oh, hey, good vibes. It's like, no, man, now I really understand what they're talking about, And the science, like, to back up the woo-woo for a second, if you look into how your thoughts and emotions affect all of your body, all of your brain, all of your central nervous system and everything, it's about the energy behind your thoughts and emotions. And there is deeper stuff to alchemize, but we can do that with practicing daily awareness, right? And I'm starting to go into the mode of, the work, that helps people do these things. But to try to stick back on the topic here, if you feel stuck, there's so many things. I obviously I would love to share space with you and we can talk about this stuff if you resonate with my content. You can also download my Rewire guide and work on those principles in your life, apply them however you can. There's reason for all of them. And it's not like a juice you got to drink or some shit. Like it's just, I've taken from my experience what I've seen work for me and those that I've worked with, and I've compiled it into this thing, and I'm going to revise it at some point because we're always growing, but it's good shit, So if there is that state of discontent, dis-ease, and you work to practice your awareness, practice rewiring your mind and become more aware and active in your life, stepping more into conscious narration out of unconscious autopilot and begin to make real shifts. And in that is the exploration of things that excite you, things that bring a smile to your face, things that you're curious about. Letting go of the fear of failure, because those that are most successful become very good friends with failure. And that's a common theme you'll see in self-development. And so any situation that pops up, let's say you are exploring something new and, you're 3 months in, you're like, this isn't it. Your old story might be like, fucking shit, man, here I am, blah, blah, blah. That's an old story. The new story is, yeah, man, I'm glad that I tried this, though, because if I didn't, I would have wondered what it would have been like to try it. And now I've learned from trying it, and now I can explore something new, If you go back into all of my historical content, there's been a general theme around a lot of it. But like on TikTok, for instance, if you go back to the very beginning of my TikTok, there's all sorts of different shit I was fucking around and doing, some silly shit, having fun with it. And I think comedy will always be a part of my content because it's a huge part of my history. Not that I've ever done stand-up comedy, but just growing up on stand-up comedy. At some point, maybe, definitely a potential there. But it's not like what's calling to me now. What's calling to me now is becoming more and more in tune with my authentic self, which I've been doing for a while. And it's worth noting, the deeper the conditioning, the more years that we've been set in our ways, the more challenging it can be to make growth. But the beginning of me making my shifts a few years back, the very beginning, I felt benefit from it out of the gate. And that's why I always say, or have historically said, there's fruit along the path. It's not a pill that we take, right? It's a way of being. It's like you think about diets. The reason diets don't work is because it's like this thing. And really it's an unconscious punishment of the self for not being who they think they should be, And so they're taking, I'm gonna get skinnier and stuff like that. For me, in the past when I had relationships with the gym and eating healthy and stuff like that, any of the things where I would force myself to do it, it wouldn't last, But the more that I grew to actually cultivate a relationship with myself, the more I grew to actually love myself and embrace who I am and work with my patterns, such a big part of this, right? The more I naturally started doing things that are healthier for me. That doesn't mean that I don't still have things in my life that one could say, well, couldn't that also be a form of self-sabotage? Yes, fair. But we are having a human experience here. I think that for me in the past, when I would try to pull the rug out on everything, just like, all right, I'm done with all this shit. It's like, dude, maybe someone who, and I don't know, because I wasn't trying this when I was 21. Maybe someone who's 21 or 22 could do that. But again, it all depends on our own unique history. I'm getting into the meat of the stuff now, which is fine. But, if you have a history, if someone is, even 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and you have a history of, even though some could say, well, that's brief history, but that's where most of the impact happens. So if a lot of shit has gone down in that time period, it may not be just a quick shift. I'm going to do a quick nod over to manifestation. I do believe manifestation is something. I don't believe it's one of those things, at least not in I don't think it's, Lamborghini, and then you look outside and there's a Lamborghini. I think it's deeper than that. I think we are all always manifesting, and basically that is a byproduct of our thoughts and emotions, because they do have an effect on our experience and how we show up and how things show up to us in our world. Like, we can see that. Reason for this little tangent is manifestation videos. Like, you'll come across a manifestation video that says, like, do this and manifest your dreams within 24 hours, right? So someone from my perspective who, doesn't have a lot of history of varying levels of trauma and emotional, called abuse or whatever, and it's pretty simple, maybe they can tap into something a little bit deeper. But I know that the individuals that I've connected with historically, if nothing else in working with and seeing the comments and things like that, like, I seem to attract individuals that have diverse backgrounds. So yeah, none of this is an overnight process, okay? And there's so many different ways that we can approach this, and so many different angles and nuances to look at in any individual's lives, in any individual's life. But there are common, constant principles that can be applicable, generally speaking, across the board. And so, the bulk of this video, and I do have a history of going over here and going over there and going over here, but the bulk of the point for this video or this podcast episode or whatever it ends up being is just to encourage someone to take a step outside of their historical scenario, right? And so whether you are super, super busy, coming back to that, 60, 70 hours a week, whatever it is, or you have all the free time in the world, find space to explore something that you're interested in and potentially document it, right? Share it with the world. If you're not ready for that, I get it. Even just exploring, even just doing this without documenting, holy shit. One of my clients tapped back in, actually Anna that was on my podcast. So amazing to work with her. One of the things she did was started getting into going and looking for rocks and stuff, different rocks. What does she call it? Rock hunting, I think, and finds all these cool, crystallized, whatever you want to call it. I'm drawing a blank on the names of these, but she sent some photos and they're gorgeous. So, even that, right? Like, if someone just takes even one day a week to spend, in theory with themselves, going and doing and exploring something that brings joy to them and allowing them to do that, allowing themselves to do that, right? And on the documentation thing, last bit of that, if you do have resistance to having your face on the camera, I get it. I've gone through historical versions of how I've shown up. I feel I've always done my best to be upfront and forthright, because I really know that that's a big part of being able to help people. Historically speaking, there's been different dynamics of my life that I haven't just come out and talked about, because some stuff historically has been personal, though the further along I've gone with this, the more I've shared, and so, it's a process. But if you are someone who's like, yeah, I'm not ready to fucking just put my face out there on the internet, you can just record a bunch of videos of whatever it is you're doing, and then narrate over it, or write subtitles over it. If you're curious, how would I do that? And you want just like a quick little talk about that, feel free to schedule a discovery call with me, man, and we can hop on and talk about that and that alone. Because I think that if that's what's called in the present moment, I think that for someone to begin to take a step outside of the current box, in theory, if you could do an hour a day, great, but even, an hour a week or 2 hours a week or something, to begin to explore things that you would enjoy exploring, to see what really resonates. And you may already know there's this thing that's always been beckoning for me to do. Yeah, man, like, let's start exploring that. Let's start incorporating that somehow. And you may have old stories that come up. We don't have time for this. No, that's an old story. It's all right, it's been there. But the reality is, if I take back this time where I'm over here on my couch and just, kind of wasting time, right, or whatever you want to call it, scrolling on the phone, I can take that time and come over here and actually work on it. And the only reason I have resistance there is because there's a little bit of unconscious fear of failure there. But the reality is, the more that I fail, the more that I learn, the more that I grow. And that's really how we begin to live a more liberated life, So yeah, man, that's the stuff. So yeah, historically, my content is it's been everywhere, man, but I've always tried to, share what's helped me. That is the theme for sure. In my insight and my perspective. And when I work with people one-on-one, like, I always say, like, this is my perspective, because that's what it is. We all have a little bit of bias, going on, and some of us have a lot more than others, but I'll leave this video with one note, just to wrap it up on something that I do mention a lot, but it's so valuable. If you just take your first hour and your last hour of your day and you begin to treat that as a ceremonial experience, and even if you're not looking at it as spiritual, just treat it as a moment of, hey man, my brain is incredibly malleable and receptive in these time periods. I'm going to utilize them to my benefit, right? And then outside of that, and we can talk about that, you can go check out more of my content and see that. And then outside of that, every day, every moment of resistance that you experience is an opportunity for you to work with your brain, your neurological networks, your central nervous system, to give you more and more of a liberated life. And when I say liberated, I mean it could be a bunch of things, but liberated from anxiety, liberated from stress, liberated from depression, liberated from feeling stuck, liberating from being stagnant, liberated from lacking motivation, all these things, But I will say one last note there. It's not what we were conditioned to believe. It's not motivation to be working your ass off every day. That's really not it. And I think that anyone that takes a deeper trek down the realm of self-development, historical, current, looking into the science of, epigenetics, neuroscience. There's so many places, quantum physics, all these things. And I'm not a scholar in those areas, but I've seen enough to make the connection, And not only have I seen enough, I've done the work in my life and helped others do it in their life enough to be like, yeah. And I'll tell you, the analytical inner critic dude in me has definitely been around. You know what I mean? Like, he's definitely been a part of the picture, but he's super, super quiet now. It's not about eradicating these parts of ourselves, the ego, etc. And I've said that before. It's about training and nurturing and kind of like taming, if you will, but developing a relationship also with these different parts of the self, because they do serve a purpose. But he's popped up a lot in the process of reaching where I am currently. And I'm still going, that's the point of this. We're still going. But along the journey, there's been plenty of times where he'd pop up and it'd just be a moment just sitting outside. I'd be all right, but then it would just pop up and be like, hey man, are you just fucking talking on the internet and people are paying you money and that's what's going on, but in practicing the work, I would recognize it and be like, all right, I know that there's a little bit of feeling there that's emerging too around that idea, but we know how this goes, right? It's not that, this is working, and the more that you begin to catch these patterns and redirect them, some of them more loud than others, the more you get past. Now, he doesn't pop up that much, he doesn't pop up that much anymore. I did just notice my disc is apparently almost full. Got to figure out that, so. But yeah, man, I hope this helps someone. The main, hopefully I don't get cut off. If I do, I'll do another thing. The main idea in this video was to hopefully inspire someone to take a step outside of their historical framework of their daily life, and it's not about all of a sudden stepping into a liberated life. It's about taking that step towards it and consistently doing it. The bit about the first hour, last hour, most people, if they just do that, if they just take that first hour, last hour and stick with that, be outside in nature, do some breathing techniques, think about things that you're grateful for, be present, don't look at your phone, right? You just do that. Fuck, man, 14 days later, you're going to feel like a different person. But we can find even more benefit if we use that as a foundation, the groundwork, to really work with our brain, our central nervous system, and yeah, man, our inner child.
Just you white in Reagan, just you white. You'll be sorry that your tears will be too light.